Space exploration is important to me because it was my dream from the time that I was a child, but more so, it is about exploration, it is about science, it is about all of these spin-offs and potential applications that we can bring back to everybody on Earth. It's not my mission or Crew 12's mission, it's really a mission for all of humanity and civilization for our entire planet. My name is Jessica Meir, and I'm the commander for NASA's SpaceX Crew 12 mission to the International Space Station. I grew up in a small town in northern Maine called Caribou. My mom tells me that I started saying I wanted to be an astronaut when I was 5 years old. From the time that I was young, biology was always my favorite subject, but still trying to participate in any type of space-related activity that I could get my hands on. I had always wanted to fly, so I started taking flying lessons at Brown as well. So I got to come here to the NASA Johnson Space Center and fly in NASA's Vomit Comet. Something that I found that is carried true into this job as well, that for me, when I have something that's both a mental and a physical challenge, that's really when I feel most complete. And so I had that in the Antarctic, I have that in this job as well. It certainly is this dream come true in being an astronaut, having had the incredible opportunity to fly to the International Space Station one time already and to be returning back there. Every experiment that we've ever done here on Earth has this omnipresent factor, this gravitational vector that we have all had from the beginning of the evolution of humans. So you can imagine if you remove a really large variable like that, there might be a wealth of anticipated outcomes, but there also may be some things that we don't know about. And that's the aspect of basic science that appeals to me so much, because the joy of science is these unexpected outcomes. A lot of our greatest scientific discoveries have not been from the hypothesis that the scientists went in on, but some completely unexpected result. And that's when things get really exciting. So to me, the basic science that we're conducting on the International Space Station has a lot of potential. Both Jack and Sophie are rookies. They haven't been in space before. So for me, mentally, it's been a lot different because this is the first time that I'm serving as a commander. I'll be commander of the spacecraft and also of the International Space Station for part of our stay. Flying with these two rookies is so rewarding because I hope that I can help shape their experience and make it an extremely positive one. And watching them, the excitement and doing things for the first time has been so rewarding. And seeing that positive impact, hopefully, that I can have on them has been something that's very special.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the St. John's Prep broadcast with Dr. Jessica Meir in the International Space Station. We are extraordinarily grateful to have you here today, to our students that are participating, to the Bell family that helped us facilitate this, and to everyone who's made this possible, especially our partners at NASA. Dr. Meir was selected by NASA in 2013 as an astronaut. She's a marine biologist, a comparative physiologist, and a seasoned space traveler, a veteran of Expedition 61 and 62. She's logged 205 days in space and made history participating in the world's first all-female spacewalk. She also made history in being the first one to ever take a St. John's Prep sticker into space and put it in the cupola of the International Space Station. Dr. Meir, thank you for being with us. We're so grateful to have this time with you. The floor is yours. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for that introduction. Big shout out to my nephew, Sebastian Bell, whom I know is a classmate of many of you. And I just wanted to welcome you on board the International Space Station. We'll be able to answer some questions today. I'll give you a little bit of a tour. And most importantly, maybe while we're answering some of the questions, it's daylight right now. And so the most important thing I want to show you is yourselves looking down at our magnificent view of the planet Earth. So we'll make some time to float over the cupola and see that as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Meir, for this incredible opportunity. My name is Claudia Wessner, and I'm the Director of Innovation and Design here at St. John's Prep. And I'm thrilled to introduce the phenomenal students and alumni who will be asking our questions today. So let's get started. We'll turn it over to Liam Buys, a member of the class of 2023. Liam, take it away.
Hey, Jess. Thanks for taking the time today. It's good talking to you in space this time instead of on Earth. I want to start off by asking you kind of what it's like launching into space. I know you've done it twice now, so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your experience with launch and also maybe if it was different doing it a second time as opposed to the first.
It's great to see you, Liam. I actually, fun fact, I used to work with Liam's dad before I became an astronaut. And I was sitting in the same room as him when I got the call finding out that I did become an astronaut. So I know his
My
family
gosh.
quite well, too. Launching
Oh,
into space is truly unforgettable. And like you said, I've done it twice now. The first time I launched, it was on a Russian spacecraft, the Soyuz spacecraft. And then this most recent time, it was on the SpaceX Dragon, which I'm sure you've seen or heard a lot about as well. And it's different. There are a lot of similarities and there are some differences between the two vehicles. I would say one of the big similarities, it's really interesting because of course we train for years before we go to space. And so we have all these simulations with really high fidelity simulators that we've gone through the whole launch and startup sequence many, many, many times with our whole crew and going through, the exact same scenario. And so you really have all of this muscle memory that you've developed. And one of the interesting things about launch is that your family and friends are all there watching and they're really nervous. Some of them are scared and they're really emotional. But for us as astronauts, we're actually the calm ones because we've rehearsed this all 1,000 times. So I found myself on my first launch having to remind myself that at the end of the day, I wasn't just going to walk out of the simulator and go have dinner. I was going to actually be in space this time. But when I got into the spacecraft, it was exactly like the simulators I had seen before. But every once in a while, I would feel the rocket move a little bit, or I'd kind of hear the fuel in the engines, and I was like, "Wait a minute, this is real. We're going to be in space this time." And it's really interesting. You actually you're in space in just over 8 minutes. So you are leaving the atmosphere, you're up in space, and you're weightless within about 8 minutes, and everything just kind of starts floating up. And I remember on my first flight, I looked over. I was with my Russian commander, Oleg Skripochka, and next to him was Hazza Ali Al-Mansouri, who was the very first astronaut from the UAE. And it was my first time and Hazza's first time as well. Oleg had been to space before. I remember looking across at Hazza, and his eyes were as
all right. So we have a satellite Passover happening right now. And so Jess is just falling off of communication for about 20 seconds, and then she's going to come right back up. So we'll just hold tight until she's back up in communications. All right, looks like she's coming back right now.
all right, I'm back.
Yay.
All right, sorry, byproduct of being in space. We had a satellite handover, so it took a minute to reconnect technology. So I think I was interrupted partly through of just talking about that launch, and everything starts lifting up. Your arms lift up, and everything that's on the floor of the spacecraft, things that have fallen down, like a dropped nut or something, a screw, everything just kind of floats up. And feeling that for the first time is just really incredible. And then it just doesn't end. It kind of feels at first like you're at the playground hanging upside down in the monkey bars and all the blood rushes to your head, and then it just doesn't go away. And then your body really gets kind of used to that, and it's just ends up being so much fun up here floating all the time. Well, launching the SpaceX Dragon was a little bit different because the two vehicles are very, very different. The SpaceX Dragon is really this modern, it's all kind of touchscreen displays, and the Soyuz is a very old vehicle, so it's very kind of more old, robust technology. So there were a lot of differences there, but they're both incredible rides to get to space.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Next up is Arahant Rangoli, class of 2027. Arahant.
Great, thank you. I was just wondering, what does a typical day look like for you on the ISS, and how does it compare to like a regular day on Earth?
Yeah, so we have about a 12-hour workday up here. So it's a pretty long day. We start every day at around 7:30 with a planning conference with the ground teams in Houston and around the world. And then we go through our day, basically it's all planned by the ground. So we open up our iPads or our laptops to look at our schedule, and all of our activities are planned out for us. And in those 12 hours, we have different activities, some maintenance activities. If we have to change a light bulb or fix the toilet, can't call a plumber or an electrician. We have to do that all of ourselves. We do a lot of incredible scientific experiments up here, everything from cell biology, physiology, and medical experiments to protein crystal growth, radiation science, materials science, combustion science. Really every aspect of science can be tested up here. If you remove gravity, who knows what kind of effects will result. And then we also have exercise. That's a really important part of of our day. I'll show you some of the exercise equipment. We get about 2.5 hours in our schedule every day to exercise. That includes getting set up and then, showering afterward. But it ends up being about an hour of weightlifting and about 40 minutes of cardio. If we didn't do exercise regularly, almost every day, then we would have a significant loss of our muscle mass and our bone density when we're up here, because without the loading of gravity, like even when you're sitting there right now and you're not exercising, but the loading from gravity is actually keeping your bones and muscles healthy. And so we have to load our bones and muscles while we're up here in order to keep them healthy. So our days are really a combination of all those things: our exercise, lots of different experiments, lots of different space station maintenance. Some days are really different where, we go outside and we have a spacewalk all day, which is something that one of my crewmates and I did last week. We're getting ready for some more spacewalks. Sometimes we have visiting vehicles come that we reach out and grab with a robotic arm. So those are the more dynamic days, but most of the days are kind of a combination of those things. And then we have another planning conference to the ground at about 7:15 p.m. So that makes it about a 12-hour day.
Wow, that's amazing. I'll take the next one. You're such an inspiration to so many people. We're curious what first inspired you to dream of becoming an astronaut?
I wish I had one particular event or something, that really sticks in my mind, but I think it was probably a combination of things for me. My parents are both from other countries, and I'm a first generation American. Neither of them knew anything about NASA or worked in the field, or, we grew up in a small town in northern Maine, so I really didn't have any exposure to NASA. But I think for me, I had this kind of natural curiosity about the world around me, especially nature and biology. That was probably instilled in me from my mother. She's Swedish, and most Swedes are pretty well connected with nature. And I just I had this scientific curiosity and this drive to explore. And I think, growing up as a kid in the 80s, we had a lot of, we didn't have the internet. So our news was what we were reading in the newspaper or what we saw in the evening news. And the space shuttle program was very active then. It was often on the launches, and landings were often on the evening news. And so I think something about that must have caught my eye. And I just started saying I wanted to be an astronaut when I was 5 years old, and I never said anything else.
That's amazing. Wow. Now we're going to hear from Will Goff, class of 2027. Go ahead, Will.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I was just wondering what classes or subjects in school ended up mattering the most for you in the line of work you do. And, as students, we're all kind of thinking the same thing, how we want to tailor our schedules to what we want to do when we grow up. So wondering what that looks like for you.
Yeah, the nice thing about being an astronaut these days is that we come from a very diverse career field, much more than, the original astronauts were all military test pilots. But now that we have a different kind of mission, living up here on board the International Space Station, which is really a national lab, we want to have all different kinds of astronauts. Just like any team on the ground, you don't want to have 10 people that all think exactly the same way. You want to have a diverse set of experiences and people that can bring different things to the team and can think and really solve a problem creatively. So our office now is made up of people from widely different fields. I'm a biologist. I was a physiology researcher, animals. I studied animals and how the physiology of animals in extreme environments. There are people in our office that are medical doctors, chemists, physicists, so lots of different types of scientists, but also still military test pilots, lots of different kinds of engineers. A majority of astronauts really do have engineering degrees still. So really all of those backgrounds. The one thing that we all have in common is a STEM degree. So there is a requirement to being an astronaut of having a degree in the STEM field. So science, technology, engineering, math. We all share that in common. So I think those are the kind of things that I would say set you up really well for lots, the STEM fields set you up really well for lots of different types of careers. Of course, it just depends what you want to do. I think the most important thing is to study the one thing that you're truly passionate about. So if that's English literature, that is equally as good of a path to pursue as a STEM field as well.
Awesome. Next, we have Massimo Petrillo, class of 2027.
Hello. Given that there's a lunar eclipse happening tomorrow, I was wondering if it's actually possible to see it from the International Space Station. And if not, what's the coolest thing you've seen in space?
So we do get to see really cool things in space. I would say my favorite thing right now are the aurora. On my first mission, it was 6 years ago, and it was actually happening at the solar minimum. So we saw some aurora, but they weren't very extreme. And as I'm sure you've seen, all over social media in the last year or so, we've had some pretty intense aurora on Earth because we're just coming off of a solar maximum of the 11-year solar cycle. So this mission, we've had some extraordinary aurora. If you don't follow me on social media, you can look at my accounts and there's lots of pictures of aurora. It's at @astro_Jessica. I've got lots of photos of aurora and time lapses as well. And they're probably my favorite thing because they're so otherworldly. Just this ethereal green dancing snake will come winding by and it doesn't even seem like, anything you've ever seen before on Earth. As far as the eclipse, we were hoping that we would have a really good view. In my last mission, there was an annular solar eclipse, so not a total solar eclipse like this one will be. But when I was up here for that, you could see this gray shadow on the surface of the Earth. So, you're seeing the shadow of the moon, and it was really cool because I'm looking down and, most of the Earth is like pretty blue and white. And then all of a sudden there's just this gray circle. There were some really cool photos taken from 2024 when there was a total eclipse and there's a huge black spot that the astronauts up here took photos of. We asked our experts on the grounds to let us know if we would be able to see the eclipse tomorrow because it depends, where we are and where we are relative to the Earth, Sun, and Moon. And unfortunately, it sounds like we're not going to have the best view. We will not be able to see any totality. But I think at one point in the afternoon, we will be able to see about 18% coverage of the moon, covering up the sun. So we have this special solar filter. And so I don't think that we're going to have any great big views of the shadow like we've seen before. But we might be able to take some pictures tomorrow toward the sun. We have the special sun filter, so we'll be able to take, the kind of that little cutout on the sun of where the moon is covering it. So it should be pretty cool. If you stay posted on if we get any good photos, I'll put them on my social media.
Great. Our next question comes from Sebi Giu, class of 2027. Sebi.
Hi. So first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. My question for you is, has there ever been a moment in space where you have struggled or failed with, and what did you do to overcome it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we face setbacks all the time while we're up here. And let's see, what was one, there was one time during my first mission where we had this really big repair. And as I am answering this question, I'm going to start floating over the cupola so that you don't miss the chance to see Earth as well. So we had this big systems. I think it was part of the of a water revitalization system up here. And so we were doing it was like an 8-hour activity where we were doing this big repair and replacement of this piece of hardware. And we had, one of my crewmates had gotten out the equipment that I needed, and then I spent hours installing it. And at the end of the day, after we were finished installing everything, we found out that we had installed the wrong one. There were different serial numbers up here, and serial numbers kind of rule our lives up here. And we found that we had installed the wrong one, which was, a really a really tough moment because we had put so much work into it. But those things happen. Everybody makes mistakes. We had a couple things on my spacewalks on the last mission happen as well, where my spacewalking partner, her helmet lights fell off, and I had to go over to her and carefully extract them from this one cable that was holding them in place. And so unexpected things like that will happen all the time. And we're ready, especially if we were to have emergency up here. We have even kind of memorized responses that we use to respond to if there's a fire or depressurization or stuff like that. So I think really our training helps us for any really major situations like that. But otherwise, I think the biggest skill that I would say would be a real asset for you in anything that you do is being able to be flexible. You need to be able to react to the unknowns and be flexible and not let that phase you. It's always great to prepare for things, and that's very valuable, but you also have to be ready that when something happens that you don't expect, that you can flex, you can adapt to that, and then, overcome it. And I think that's one of the most important skills that we have as astronauts. I'm going to turn this camera around so now you can see you.
Oh my goodness.
Let's see
Wow.
where we are. Looks like we are in South America because I can see a familiar river over here. Yeah, we are we basically just came down across North America. We came across around South Carolina, and then we went right by the Bahamas, and now we're coming over the northern part of South America. And so our orbit is inclined. You know, if we were just orbiting around the equator, that would be an inclination of 0, and we would just always go around the equator. But our orbit is actually inclined to 51 degrees. So basically, we go north to about a latitude of around like Vancouver, BC. That's our furthest point north, and then we dip down again and come basically following like a southeast trajectory, and then we'll dip down all the way to like the southern tip of South America or Africa, depending on where we are, and then we'll kind of go back up again. So we're coming down to South America, and then we'll end up just south of Africa, and then we'll turn north again, and we'll come up through like Far East Asia. So it's really incredible. You know, we are up here about 250 miles, so we actually go around the entire planet every 90 minutes.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So this is the cupola, and it has this amazing view where there's one of our big solar arrays. The cupola has windows all the way around it. So I kind of have this like 360 view of the Earth, and then there's one window that faces directly down. So you're looking down at South America right now. And actually just about an hour before the call, or maybe it was a little bit more before that, we flew right over Boston. So I was in one of the windows with a big lens, and I got some really cool photos of Boston. So I was very close to you guys.
Wow, that is absolutely incredible. Thank you for showing that to us. I'm going to head it back over to Liam, who has another question for you.
Yeah, thanks. I was wondering if you could talk a bit about the food situation up there. There's obviously no kitchens and grocery stores, so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what that process is for eating every day.
Yeah, I actually just had dinner right before this call because we are on GMT, so pretty close to London time. And so basically our food consists of mostly dehydrated food. So we have dehydrated food, and then we rehydrate it with our water station, and I can show you some of that. And then we also have a food warmer as well. So some of the stuff is just kind of like MRE that just has to be warmed up. And it is pretty interesting. Like we actually have quite a big variety of food. We actually have a lab in Houston that's developing new food all the time. And the Russian cosmonauts have different foods. So they share, we can trade some food. The European Space Agency sometimes sends some food up as well. So we actually have a pretty good diversity of food up here. And, you know, it's not, we certainly miss having fresh fruits and vegetables, but every once in a while when we have a resupply cargo vehicle, they'll send some like oranges or grapefruits. I actually had part of a grapefruit today that was left over from a vehicle. And the best part is when we actually grow things like lettuce. We're actually growing some kale and some wasabi mustard greens right now that we'll get to eat a little bit of once they grow. And so that's really nice because I eat a lot of fresh vegetables and salads on Earth, but up here we don't have much of that. So I definitely miss that. But otherwise, the food it's pretty good. There's a lot of variety.
Amazing. Arahant has our next question. Go ahead.
I know you talked a lot about exercise before this. So how do you like specifically stay physically fit while living in space?
Yeah, so we have, I can bring you over to it. I'll flip the camera back around here. And so we have 3 different exercise devices up here. Like I mentioned, we have a lot of time in our schedule each day to exercise since it is so important. And one of the main machines that we have is right behind me, right behind the cupola. And this is called the ARED, the Advanced Resistive Exercise Device. And it's an engineering marvel, in my opinion. It's this incredible piece of machinery that allows us to lift weights. So you can pretty much do everything that you would do in a gym, from squats to deadlifts, bench press, shoulder press, really everything. You can see here's the bar right here. And so this is the bar just like you would have at the gym with weights on it. But you might ask, how do you lift weights in weightlessness? So of course, you know, nothing would weigh anything. So what we have here, we have resistance that's driven by these really large vacuum tubes. So that's what generates the resistance, and you can dial it all the way up to 600 pounds. So we've got plenty of resistance, and you can reconfigure this bar, like I said, in a really wide variety of ways to accomplish all of those different types of weightlifting exercises. And then right over here, we have the treadmill. So we have 2 different cardiovascular exercise devices. This is the treadmill. You can see the green tread down here. This is actually kind of what you might think is on the wall, but you know, there's no floor, ceiling, or walls here. We can use all of the surfaces independently. In order to run, though, of course, if I just tried to run on this treadmill with nothing holding me down, I would just bounce off. So we each have a harness that's fitted for us. It's kind of kind of fits like a backpack, and you put this harness on, and then you attach it to these bungees down here, and that keeps you down in contact with the surface. And then if we fly back over here toward the lab, third piece of exercise equipment is called the CBIS. It's a cycle ergometer. So it's basically a stationary bike, but it's a special kind of stationary bike because, up here, you don't need a seat or handlebars. All we have is this machine down here. It's got these little clip-in pedals, so just like normal clip-in bike pedals. And it turns out like you flip it out this way, clip your pedals in, and then you can just pedal from here. So that's the way we'll get cardiovascular exercise either from the bicycle or from the treadmill.
Wow. Very impressive. I think for the sake of time, I'm going to toss it over back to Will for our last question. Go ahead, Will.
Yeah, thank you. Just to close it out, I know a lot of us students are kind of in that moment where we're starting to figure out where we're going to go, what we want to do with our life. So I'm kind of wondering, what's the best piece of advice that you could give us for someone who doesn't know what they want to do with their life? One of us, maybe another student at the prep, someone watching. That'd be great.
I'm not in. Here. Okay, sorry. We should still be connected, but it's just hung up for a second. I think it will reconnect here in a minute. So your
we can hear
question is
you.
a little bit garbled. Okay, but I think you asked for the best piece of advice, and that was the best piece of advice just for kind of you students in general about what you're thinking about for the future.
That's right. Someone that's not too sure what they want to do and how you kind of figure that out yourself.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I know growing up, everybody knew that I wanted to be an astronaut. It was kind of what everybody identified me with from the time I was a kid all through college. And a lot of times people would say to me, you're so lucky you have this one thing, you know exactly what you want to do. And I thought maybe, but like I also know that there's such a small chance of it ever happening because not many people, there are so many people that are very well qualified, just as qualified as all of us that are up here. But there's a lot of luck involved as well. And there's a very small chance that it'll actually happen for me. So I was a little bit worried that I wouldn't find something else that really made me fulfilled and content like that. In the end, of course, my dream did come true, but I had also found this other path that I think I kind of just ended up on fortuitously because I was always pursuing the things that I was interested in. So, biology was my favorite subject growing up. And so I had this passion for the natural world around me. And I always kept that up. Sometimes people were like, oh, maybe you need to be a pilot or an engineer to be an astronaut. But what really resonated me was the biology. So I was studying biology and I was still trying to immerse myself in activities that were, related to space because I thought that they were so interesting. And for me, in the end, it was because I was following the thing that I was passionate about. I think that's the one commonality between all of us that become astronauts. We have found a career that makes us truly happy. And I think, if you're not really passionate about something, then I don't think that you will really thrive at it. And I also don't think that, of course, the most important thing, that you won't be happy. And so I think finding the one thing that ignites you, that really gives you that excitement and that passion, I think that's the most important element. And of course, it also takes a lot of hard work and perseverance. You need to be willing to take a risk, and you have to be willing to take that risk and recognize that you may fail. And that's when you learn the best lessons. So I think, a combination of all of those things is really, what it takes to make your dreams really come true. And, I think for me, I was just a kid growing up in a small town that said I wanted to be an astronaut. And in the end, somebody gets through. And so it's just proof that when you do that, when you identify that passion and when you work hard for it, I think you can really set out whatever you aspire to. I also wanted to show you guys one fun thing because I flew past the food and I didn't show you it, but little science demonstration here. You guys all know, your basic biology and chemistry, and you know about hydrogen bonds and surface tension. And up here, this is just our water. So up here, even drinking water can be a lot more fun because on Earth you have surface tension and the hydrogen bonds that are holding water together, but you still have the force of gravity that's pulling it down. So up here, when I take this water and eject some out of my out of my water packet here, those hydrogen bonds and that surface tension are just keeping that all together. So in order to drink it, all I need to do is this. You can probably see my reflection in there too. I'm like, doesn't matter how old or young you are, everybody loves to see how fluids behave in space. And that's what makes things so exciting up here all the time, right? I mean, every system, even something as simple as water, remove gravity and it becomes this wonderful thing that we can learn about.
That is incredible. Thank you so much, Dr. Meir, for taking your time today to answer our students' questions and for sharing this incredible experience with us. I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Hardiman.
Sure. Thanks, Claudia. To our students, thanks for your time. And Dr. Meir, really, really grateful for your time here, for the wonderful show that the things you showed us. It's awesome to see Earth from space. And we're really grateful for the connection. And thanks to all our partners at NASA. And again, to the Bell family for making this possible, and appreciate everyone who's been part of our presentation today. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Claudia, and thanks, Ed. It was wonderful to have all of you students up here and welcome the St. John's community. So good luck with everything and all of your future pursuits, and maybe I'll see you around someday when I get back to Earth.
That'd be awesome. We'd love to have you to campus anytime.